Okay.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you. Like I say, I want to try to be as brief as I can, but I do want to provide you with some information just that I've been organizing alongside Paula and others here for the past 4 years on electric school buses. And someone just asked me today, how'd you do that? Why'd you start doing that? And it was just an opportunity that came up with MN350 because we were looking for things to do after the election with our South Metro group that Paula had founded. And one of the MN350 folks said, "Hey, look at electric school buses." I had no idea what the issue was, but when you did the research, literature research, became really obvious that these are very very beneficial both for climate and for health, and also for academic performance. And it was great timing because there was money flowing from the Volkswagen settlement, and the infrastructure law then came on board with $5 billion nationally, and so I said, yeah, absolutely. Let's do some things with that. And now here we are 4 years later, and I think we're beginning to get some really good success in Minnesota, but we need more. And I look forward to talking to people about your ideas on how we as health professionals or advocates can try to get more of our schools engaged and apply for the funds that are available today. So if you go to the next slide, so we've had the opportunity to work on Brenna, can you go on policy at the state level, and then a lot of advocacy, mostly grassroots advocacy, trying to talk with school boards and school leaders and get community engagement to do that as well. This is us in 2023. We were able to work with our senator and our representative here down in Savage and Burnsville and have them author a bill that passed in 2023 that funded $13 million of just Minnesota funds for Minnesota schools to get electric school buses, which was great. That I don't take much credit for that. I mean, that was really, me, joining HPHC, talking to Mike Menzel about, we were not doing very well in getting the federal funding. We had, like, in that first round in 2022, three electric school buses funded in Minnesota out of the whole $1 billion that was given away. We were the worst in the upper Midwest in terms of getting any of that money. I showed Mike that, and we were in the midst of passing the 100% bill, and Mike said, "Hey, we should write a bill and try to get some funding." And I had no idea what that meant. So I am so appreciative of HPHC and their policy knowledge. And we got Chris Conry involved with the 100% campaign. He said, "Yeah, I'll help you." And then we got our senator and representative to be authors of that bill, and very quickly it just went through, and it passed. So $13 million is not nothing. It's it'll fund dozens of buses and probably 4,000 kids riding on school buses that are zero emission, and maybe hundreds of kids that have asthma on those buses. So it's going to make a difference. But there's nearly 1 million students across Minnesota, and nearly 12,000 buses across Minnesota. So it's not nothing, but we need a lot more. And so this is us testifying. You see Paula there and me. We're in the small pictures there, because the most important people for me that were testifying that day is Brooke Roper and her son CJ on her lap, because that is really gets down to the personalization, the humanization of why this is so important. And I'm going to show you, the benefits of school buses. But CJ has asthma, and he's been hospitalized with asthma, and he was in kindergarten, and Brooke put him on a bus to go on a field trip, and he came back, and he was not breathing well. And it is frightening, if moms or parents with kids with asthma, to see your kid not breathe well. And fortunately, they treated him at home, and after breathing, fresher air, he didn't have to go to the hospital. But that is real. And Brooke is so she's so powerful now. I mean, she is so passionate about this because of that personal story. And she is now on the Hopkins School Board, and has been all around the area advocating for electric school buses. And we're going to talk with Black pastors, elders tomorrow, that Joanne set up this meeting, and try to make sure these funds are directed to the right communities. If you go to the next slide, this is Brennan. This is just really a high level summary, and I know, Holly, you want the stats. The links are in there, and I've actually read through and looked at all the research graphs, and I presented to a group of students in a stats class in high school stats class this year. So that was kind of fun to kind of tell them, well, when we look at research, there's statistical significant difference. And this is what convinced me, right? You look at these studies, they are randomized studies, peer reviewed in medical literature, and they show these statistically significant changes when kids are riding in buses that have less fossil fuel emissions. They have improved standardized test scores. They have 8% lower absenteeism. When they do those fitness tests in school, and this was in the state of Georgia, their aerobic capacity tests were better, the walk and run tests. And the University of Michigan, the study with actual, pulmonary lung tests, their lung capacity was better, and they had less exhaled nitric oxides, which is a lung inflammation test. So for me, it's like, well, yeah, we have this technology. We should be putting kids on those clean buses with zero emissions. It's a no-brainer for me. And then the funding was there, and some of these priority schools could get these buses for virtually free. Financially, I got an MBA. It's like, well, that there's an ROI. It's pretty simple. You get a free bus, but it was an effort to get people in schools to make that change or think about how they might change their transportation. And if you go to the next slide, Brenna. So, during the time we were organizing, the $5 billion bipartisan infrastructure law was passed with the $5 billion clean school bus program. And like I said, in the first year, we did extremely poorly. And I think that hopefully fired a lot of people up. And we have a clean Coalition for Clean Transportation that got involved. MN 350 has always been actively involved, and I think because of Mike and Kathy and their sort of passion around this, getting HPHC and health professional voices involved and connected, and with the 100% campaign and writing that bill. And there's just a lot of energy with a lot of folks to say, hey, we need to get the word out. We need to go to these meetings and table and go to school board meetings. So it's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to hearing from all the smart people in this room on what do you think? How can we actually even get more? Because we are doing better. And if you go to the next slide, like I said, we only got 3 buses that first round, but in the second round of the rebate program, you can see that we got 67 buses funded. So that 67, if we get those 67 buses here in the next year or so, that's going to we're going to have over 100 buses, electric school buses, driving around Minnesota. And like Kathy once told me, those things are just rolling billboards. And my hope is we're hitting a tipping point where people are saying, "Oh, wow, we should really go after and get funding for these buses here in Minnesota." You can see that, from all these Big Ten states in Region 5, we're still not the best. Illinois is doing great. Michigan, first round, got tons of buses, and the second round as well. But we're catching up, and I think it's a credit to a lot of people in this room and others in the Coalition for Clean Transportation, and a lot of champions out there. But it's work. And if you go to the next slide, so we've worked on policy. We with Mike's sort of engagement and helping Mike and Kathy and Kathleen, it was new to me, and that was fun. But a lot of what we do is just grassroots, going to school board meetings. And what's really powerful is, for me, we can go talk. That's Mike and at Edina talking with the physician voice, and that's me at the Minneapolis Public Schools. And Sunita and I went to there and talked to them. But what's really powerful is when you get the kids to talk, when the students talk. It's really hard to not listen because, and they're so great at presenting. I was just so impressed. In the top left there, that's Rosemont Apple Valley Egan, their Greens team. We went to the school and talked to them. They said, "Yeah, we'll take that on." They started a petition. They got students to sign a petition, and they went to the school board meeting. And I think that actually made the difference. They actually applied and are getting, I think, 6 electric school buses through the last rebate round. And then Edina, Mike helped figure out how do we get with the Edina students. And right above Mike there is several Edina students that went to their school and they applied and they actually received funds. And I think they're getting a couple of electric school buses coming. And then Holly, if you're still on, I'm sorry. Um, with the Swiglows, the parents, Holly is there. She is just an excellent organizer with Roseville, and is running into brick walls. But they have been organizing for a few years now, and she helped spearhead that. I think she got a petition of like 500 or more students to sign, and they've been to the school board meeting several times. And I share that story with these other students, and it's just an inspiration, even though they haven't been yet successful to convince their school and school board and transportation provider to apply. They are making headway, so it's so much fun to work with students. And then the last, is there a last slide there? Yeah. So I've tried to sort of bring my thoughts together. How do you engage with school leaders? There's a link there, a QR code. I have some slides, some handouts, some email examples, presentation scripts if you're going to go to your school board, and sort of the process on how to research when the school board meetings are. That's one thing that we've done, Paul and I and others, just grassroots. Let's go to the school board meeting, tell them about the funding and the benefits. And one last slide, and this is a pitch for you. Next week, I am also now serving as a board, one of the board co-chairs for this new future fund, which is part of 100%. It is a political action committee that was started by 100% of Unidos, focused on, making sure we get elected officials in office that care about climate. So, thanks to them, because it was Chris Conroy and Aurora from 100% that really helped get that $13 million bill through. They are passionate about making sure that we have, that trifecta majority of climate leaders in our Minnesota legislature. And we are launching our launch party next week at a great venue out in St. Paul. And we're going to have some really powerful leaders speaking there, Aaron Murphy and Athena Hollins, Aisha Gomez, and Scott Dibble. And it's going to be a lot of fun. There'll be a lot of energy, and if you can attend, I guarantee you're going to have a great time and learn a lot from these leaders. And hopefully you can donate some to that too, because we are 82 days from the election. And if things go well, we have a chance to keep this momentum going. If things don't go well, because we know, 6 years ago when we didn't have a majority, there is nothing going to happen in Minnesota on climate action if the majority of the either party are climate deniers like they've voted in the past. So really important to get involved in election work, campaign work. We in health professionals, Healthy Climate, want to do policy work and grassroots efforts to engage communities. And I love getting involved with students. So I will tell you, it is great that Rosemont and Edina and schools like that, I will work with any school are getting these buses. But Joanne is going to talk a little bit about environmental justice. And we want to figure out how can we actually support those environmental justice communities, because they are not necessarily applying as much as they could actually get these buses and kids breathing clean air in communities that are already suffering from the worst air quality out there. So I'm going to shift to Joanne, and then we will hopefully have a great conversation about what we can do as health professionals and advocating.
Thank you, Dan. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, when I joined HPHC last year as their first fellow, they really taught us how to advocate. And like I said, when I did my public health degree, I didn't get much environmental or climate change. Didn't really know much about it. But you know what environmental justice is, but whether people can do something about it. I grew up right off I-94 in St. Paul in a little project right off Dale and 94, and never thought about it as a child. But as an adult, I realized how bad the air is all the way from 94 coming north. It's pretty bad. And that is, where children have asthma, and Latino and Black children are exposed more because of poverty and location and things they really can't do anything about. So environmental justice is a big passion of mine where everybody, can get the same level of environmental protections and be able to make decisions in things that affect their health. You can go to the next slide. And, I was looking, the Minnesota legislature created, defined environmental justice areas, as you can see there. But what is so surprising is about half of the 7-county metro area is in an environmental justice area, which is just astonishing to me. That it's like 1.6 million people live in environmental justice areas, which is really kind of disheartening. I'll go to the next slide. And this was just a snapshot I took of this interactive air pollution that shows kind of areas. And the first slide is over, I think it's in kind of east side of St. Paul along the freeway, kind of where 94, 35E all meet. I just picked a point and just a day and looked at it. And you can see they're all kind of in the orange and red. They're all in kind of hazardous areas that would be harmful for anybody, not just those with asthma, but which was just shocking to me. That is, you can pull that up several days. And I think I have another map that shows it a little bit better. But, and we know from history, right, that racial and discrimination, you can go to the next slide, I'm sorry, that racism and discrimination over the years have played a part in this. Environmental justice, the whole movement came about by where people live. Where people live, unfortunately, kind of defines how much exposure they get. And it's typically, minority areas, people of color. So, that was kind of surprising when I kind of did some of the research and was looking and joined HPHC. But I didn't really know any of that until I joined HPHC and really started kind of learning. Go to the next one. And this is a map. This data was from the recently released Minnesota statewide health assessment. And that's a map that shows that certain zip codes have 5 times more asthma-related emergency room visits. And as a nurse anesthetist and a nurse, for over 30 years, I started looking into that and sharing it with Dan and Paula and HPHC. And when you look at the zip codes, it's North Minneapolis, 55411, and really all along that I-94 corridor, kind of the Rondo neighborhood that you guys have probably heard something about, that the 94 came in and split. And all those communities along that whole area have high air pollution. And it's, it's really just kind of disturbing. But we know, that the justice movement, as I said earlier, came from one statistical fact, that those who live, work, and play in the most polluted environments are commonly people of color and those living in poverty. Go to the next one. And as a nurse, I connected it, with the statewide community health assessment, with all the maps about I-94 and the Merck and the, all the air pollution that comes from different industries. And you look at one emergency room visit, and it can go from $19 as high as $12,000, depending on the severity, and then these areas, it kind of just struck me when I was looking at it. And I was like, how many of these school districts have electric buses? I mean, if you think about it, I was telling Dan and Paula that if you look at all the money we could save from lowering the emergency room visits, right, knocking them in half, we could get a whole fleet of electric buses for North Minneapolis or Brooklyn Park, where all those air pollution areas are. So we started kind of pushing on that. And as Dan said, we're going to go tomorrow and speak with a group of Black pastors that represent churches through Ramsey and Hennepin County to try to educate them, because, I know not a lot of people know about this. They don't really realize, I mean, everybody has seen electric vehicles, but when you realize the health benefits that Dan talked about, especially in children who have asthma and people who are at more risk for heart and lung disease, I mean, it is astonishing. But to connect them are very hard. You could save the money. It's just a hard connection because you have public health people and nursing and people who see people in the emergency room. Um, but the health benefits are just remarkable for electric buses. So I'm hoping that we get some progress. Through different areas that we can educate people and really get them to advocate. Because like communities in Edina and, even where I live, in Osseo, Albertville area, you know, we have economic means. We can, drive our kids to school or we can, do things like that. A lot of these poor communities, unfortunately, come from single parent homes. They're renters. And these kids don't have any control of what they're exposed to, so a lot of them, their parents smoke. Um, but it's the kids who suffer. And that's really what kind of drives me on that. Um, you go to the next slide. And then the last thing I looked at is I was kind of trying to think to myself, to me, it's like a simple give these kids electric buses in these poor neighborhoods that suffer from asthma. And you could save money through emergency room visits and then roll it over to other communities so that all of Minnesota's children can breathe easy and have electric school buses. But Biden's Justice 40 environmental that gave the money, the Clean Bus Act, that gave the money did say that 40% of the money should go to disadvantaged communities. But unfortunately, disadvantage can be identified different ways. And these are the areas that the Justice 40 fact sheet defines them. But in reality, what it seems like happens is you take a community like Red Lake that has electric buses and you compare it to all of Minneapolis. And of course, Red Lake has more poverty because Minneapolis is a very big area. But when you compare Red Lake to North Minneapolis, you may see that there's kind of equal poverty levels, and on top of that, there may be environmental disadvantage and health disadvantage, and just equity issues where the kids in North Minneapolis, because of cumulative exposure, have these 5 times more asthma emergency room visits, which we can, kind of decrease that. And that's, I think, kind of rolls out into higher education scores and academic performance and really just prevents loss of premature life. And I think the Minnesota statewide assessment said that 1,600 lives were lost in the last year from air pollution. And that is just really, really tragic. And a lot of it is kids who have no control over the situations they live in. Um, and I think, is there another slide? Okay, no, that's it. And so that's really just trying to put it all together so that we can get electric buses for all of Minnesota kids, but at least starting to those that are most disadvantaged so we can just keep rolling the money over, and the money saved in healthcare can go to other school districts across Minnesota. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Brenna, how do you want to lead the conversation? I put the slide up there just as because I'm actually very curious with all the people in the room. You heard sort of what we do and the health equity, health justice angle of this. I'm come off mic or put something in the chat. I'm really curious what you all think.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thanks so much to Dan and Joanne for preparing all this fantastic information to bring to our attention and to guide this conversation and discussion. I think that we have a couple of things in the chat here, along with sort of Dan's prompting. But Carol, would you like to share more? You put some things in the chat here about what you're doing with Florida Clinicians for Climate Action. But yeah, if you'd like to come off mute and just share more, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. Well, I put in the chat. We're doing similar things. We're working with Moms Clean Air Force. We've developed a couple of handouts that we can share with the school board. But your handout, very easy to see with some statistics. I can see if we can share them if you wanted to look at them and see if you want to tailor them for yours. And I think we also talk about the benefits for the drivers of the school bus. We remind them that. And probably you all do too. And the economics of using electric versus diesel. So that's pretty much what we're doing. We got a lot of money, the state of Florida, for electric school buses. We just wrote a support letter for one county, Duval County, that was getting funded for it. We wrote it to the EPA in support of those of them getting those school buses. I don't know if that's going to help or not, but another thing. But thank you. That's great what you all are focusing on too. Very important.
Yeah, I think, Paul, you may have tried to see if there's an active Moms Clean Air Force in Minnesota. It doesn't seem like there is. And I know I spoke with you, John, about is there like a organized lung association or somebody organized like a support for parents who have kids with asthma, but at least you weren't aware of any group like that. It seems to be a gap here in Minnesota, given the prevalence of asthma.
Yeah. Well, last I checked with Moms Clean Air Task Force, they didn't list Minnesota as an active state,
Yeah.
I don't think. But no, I couldn't think of that kind of resource group for parents or anything.
Brooke talked about starting one, actually. She was asking me if I would help her start one. She said there wasn't one.
Yeah, I think, if there was some effort to do that, I can only imagine, asthma is like 1 in 12, 1 in 14 kids or something. And in those communities you talk about, Joanne, it's probably like 1 in 6, right? And it's frightening. And I can't imagine. I imagine there's a hunger for parents to sort of get together and talk, what works, what doesn't work, and it's just amazing that there's no organized group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was surprising. In the Minnesota statewide assessment on that page 74, they talk about how Minnesota asthma rates are pretty low compared to the entire US. Yeah. But then what they do identify is the gaps are huge, though. The difference between the kids that do have it in, people of color and BIPOC children, that's huge. So they do talk real big about the gap in the asthma rates. But overall, when you put it in a big pot and put everybody in there, the asthma rates look great.
Yeah.
Maybe we should explore trying to talk to PTA organizations. I don't know if that would be a good group, because it's parents interested in kids' welfare. So we could explore that.
Yeah. Is there like a statewide PTA group or in some of these more environmental justice communities active? And I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
That's kind of the problem me and Brooke talked about, because she talked about wanting to start one and even about efforts she has made. But unfortunately, these communities, and I mean, you'll see tomorrow when we go to the elders meeting, but it's so tough because, right, a lot of them are single parents, right? They work. A lot of them don't have a lot of free time, to even do it. And they have so many things on their plate that it's hard to take an hour or two out to go to a PTA meeting. I mean, I know as a single mom, it is really tough. So I told Brooke, I said, maybe, we can look at how to start one of those meetings. But in the meantime, once we educate the pastors, who will then go back to their churches, who educates the community. And once we first educate, I think then maybe there'll be some room for a PTA meeting and some buy-in, right? Because if you don't show them why they need it, I mean, they have no clue. I mean, just as me, and I'm, fairly educated, I didn't realize the huge gaps and how many people, in these areas really suffer through that.
Oh, can I jump in for a sec too? I was just reading Holly's note about do pediatricians ask about air pollution in annual physicals, and just thinking about like a different way of thinking about this. Would it make sense to provide education to family physicians, pediatricians about this effect? Like, is there some way to help educate all of us? Because I have not asked about, does your kid ride a bus? Things like that. That hasn't been part of my routine when I talk to kids with asthma. So just thinking about, is there some way to do more education for health providers? And then would there be something that I could easily give parents if they wanted to advocate for electric buses? Is that something you guys have talked about at all?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's the power of getting health professionals together. What can I actually do in my day job to impact this? We were with Dr. Lalitha Tsirupanini up in Ely, and I think we were, talking with some doctors up there, and I think they said the same thing, because Lalitha is really good at asking, well, these forest fires and there's air pollution issues, and do you educate your patients about that, and use air filters, and and they don't. I mean, the doctor we talked to said, no, we don't generally have anything. But I just had a patient, because it was during the time when there was a Canadian forest fire, blowing that smoke into Ely. And so I just had a patient. I think, that probably is what triggered her COPD, and she's in the hospital now. And so, I think there's a gap there, and perhaps that's something we can help fill if there's a lot of interest out there.
Can I jump in on one more thing? The other thing I was thinking, just in the arm of education about electric school buses, and just to kind of broaden education for everyone that might increase interest and things like that. Is there any signage or anything on an electric bus that drives around, like that says, and I don't know, is that even allowed to say, like, this is an electric bus and this reduces, air pollution, and asthma in kids, or something? I don't know if that's even allowed, but I remember being at the state fair last year and looking at the electric bus. And it looks exactly like a normal bus. So maybe most people don't even know that it's an option. And so, like, if you knew as a parent, like, oh, I see these buses driving around that say electric buses, but my kid gets on a regular bus, would that help to sort of build momentum as well? I don't know.
I like that idea of, we just did that at the Raspberry Festival. We had all these big signs made. So, and they did a great job of getting, one of the signs was huge, this is an electric bus, because you hit the nail on the head. I mean, wouldn't that be cool if we had, like, you could get your bus painted for free, or I don't know, but some way, because I always think of that as our goal. We want these ambassador buses going around showing people that electric vehicles are great. But what if they don't really realize it? So that is something to think of. I don't know if there's some other way we could attack that.
Yeah, Dan, you had mentioned that a electric bus could be a traveling billboard.
That was Kathy that first mentioned that.
Sorry. Okay, Kathy.
But I repeated it, so I'm not going to take credit for it, though.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, the city buses, it's clear which bus is natural gas. That's written on the bus. So I would think it would be possible to do something like this on the school bus, and I would think the schools would be all excited about doing that also. But that's just one piece. And Kathy, you have any thoughts on parent advocacy groups? No? Okay. I think that's a bigger nut to crack, is how do we get to the parents?
But I think, I was talking to Dan before, I think when you start seeing more buses, Minnesota was so behind the ball in getting buses. But, I know my brother-in-law has a church over North Minneapolis, and I know when we did an event and saw an electric bus. Driving down Broadway in North Minneapolis, parents would look twice because that electric bus is so clean compared to everything else that is driving down the street. And I mean, when I was standing next to it, I was just like, wow, this is just such a easy breath, a nice breath of fresh air. It was really kind of amazing to me, thinking back to what my kids rode.
Yeah, I love that idea, and I know you've seen buses wrapped. And actually, I know the first one in Lakeville 8 years ago. It's still running. When they rolled that out, it was wrapped. Half of it was wrapped in some green lettering, and then it's electric. And I know Nick Martini up in North Star Busing. He says they have their own wrapping, and he seemed like interested, and particularly if you're going to display it, you can maybe put it on get it wrapped. But even when you're driving it all year long, having it wrapped it's a rolling billboard. I love that concept.
Also, excuse me, Dan. Speaking of PR, I don't think we've mentioned yet that we're going to have an electric bus and tabling at the state fair. So if you're coming to the state fair, stop by the Eco Building, say hello, and bring folks along with you. I think that we're going to reach a lot of people there for sure.
Yeah. Yep. I'll be there. 10 a.m. on Friday. We have a panel presentation. I'll be part of that. Come see the bus and spread the word. I'd love to talk about policy. I know we're at time, but I don't know where we're going to go with policy. What's next? More funding. Some goals to put in front of the legislature. I sort of throw out there that we should have all electric buses on the roads by 2040 or something. And could that be actually written as a legislative goal? I think it depends on the election results. I know Holly. I met Holly McKissick, who's online here too, because Nick Friends is a senator that leads the chairs the energy committee. Holly is actually grew up as neighbors with Nick, and I think your grandma lives next door to Nick. So I know you were saying that you could maybe help with some engagement with Senator Friends.
Yeah, happy to help out there. The classic Minnesota. My brother's played hockey with his kids, so that's a deep Minnesota bond.
Yeah, so we might pull you into policy discussion with Senator Friends if you're able and willing.
Yeah, excellent. And we try to keep this to the hour, knowing that everybody has plenty of things you're involved in. But yeah, I just wanted to leave space if there's any sort of final questions, ideas as we're trying to wrap things up. So it looks like maybe Josh, you wanted to say something?
Yes. So you talk about needing to win, all three sections of government. So I know Dan's aware of this. We're having a fundraiser for the DFL in 2 weeks, and we've already raised $75,000, and we're going for more. And so I'm going to put it's called the Kamala Garden Party, and it's over on Lake of the Isles. And we've got Speaker Horton, Tina Smith speaking, and Adam Levy and Turn are going to play. So I will put I'll put it in the message here. I'm not that savvy at all this stuff. It's called dfl.org/garden, and come donate and join us. And it should be fun. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to do this in the chat, dfl.org/garden, and that should get you there. And we'd love to have you donate some money and join us. And then there was some folks asked about the all things electric. We're looking at around next Earth Day in April, so we have some time, and I'll reach out to health professionals and get you guys involved and get out mailers and information on that.
Yeah,
thanks.
That's great.
Can you say the name of it again? Because I followed that link and I can't find it.
You can't get there? Okay, let me see. It's dfl.org/garden, and that should get you to the invite. DFL. Oh, that doesn't, does it? Darn. Okay.
But you called it,
You can email it out.
Kamala garden party or a.
I'm not the tech guy with this. Go to your browser. That didn't work, did it? I just tried it. Garden party. That doesn't work. Okay.
At least you can thread a scorpion on someone's stomach.
Send me your emails and I will send I'll send them via email. That'd be easy.
Yeah, if you send it out to send it out to me, Josh, and I can
I'll send it to you. Yes, I've sent it to you already, and I'll send it to you again. And
okay,
then
great.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah, no, I love the EV Expo and bringing a bus to an EV Expo, and I hope that turns out really well. I know John has helped in the Lung Association has helped get some buses to the different expos, so you found the right folks here.
Great, thank you.
And before I know we're trying to wrap up, and Diane, you were going to say something, and I was going to ask you a question. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask the date of the garden party.
Oh yes, that is August 27th. So it's 13 days away.
Okay. Right.
Diane, what I was going to ask you, did you say you were active in the Minnesota chapter of AAP? Because I was wondering if the pediatricians are interested in this issue, maybe we could do an educational thing with them or something.
Yes, I would definitely say pediatricians are, it's always time limited of what can be covered. But resources, quick and readily available resources for parents would be awesome.
Yeah, I love that idea of Michelle's maybe we could actually develop some sort of handout or resource. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, fantastic.
Simple.
Well, yeah, well, you guys are my people. I appreciate you coming tonight and having the conversation, and there'll be further opportunities. So stay engaged with HPHC. Reach out to me personally if you say, hey, I have some idea on electric school buses. I'm going to keep doing this work. So,
I just thought of one thing. I'm so sorry. I've been noodling the whole meeting. The EV Owners Club, which is run through Fresh Energy and Juka Kukkonen. We've never done an EV electric bus seminar.
That's a great idea. Because those guys are so into the technology. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll contact Juka and see if we can get that put together.
And Josh, just so you know, we go to a big EV show that sounds right up your alley, like what you're doing in Bloomington every year. And we have connections to people who work at it, and we bring an electric school bus to it, and they have all sorts of other electric stuff there. And it's at Oak Grove Presbyterian Church on Old Chalk Street, Bloomington. So if you want to contact us about any details of that or how they make it work or connect to the people who actually put it together, let us know.
I think I'm John
Crampton, yep.
John Crampton, yeah.
Yes. They're connected.
Yes.
They're connected.
He's
sure.
Totally. I call it the John Crampton plan. So that's what we're using.
Yeah. And he grew up at your church, which is awesome.
Right.
So that's so cool.
And another thing I want to mention is if you want to advocate with your own school board in your community, we can help you with that. I know Sunita, I don't want to speak for Sunita, but she actually supports people who want to testify, and we can give you information and, short talking points. A lot of school boards will just let you give 2 minutes of whatever you want to say. And it's an opportunity to put that issue before the school board.
Yeah, and I think it's powerful. Just my story. So I don't live in Minneapolis, but I went. It's open. If you have any connection to Minneapolis, I went to their school board meeting with Sunita, and I think you did too, Kathleen. After we did, and I don't think that was on their radar at all. And then suddenly they are funding for electric school buses in Minneapolis. It's not enough, as Joanne will tell you. They got hundreds and hundreds of buses in environmental justice communities that deliver these things. But from there, I think a teacher heard of that. He had their fifth graders write the school leadership about we want electric school buses, and suddenly we hear they got a grant for 2, and they're funding 2 on their own, and we went to the rollout of those buses. So it is powerful to go and just make people aware. And if you're interested, particularly in those communities, if you live in Minneapolis or St. Paul or anywhere that you think deserves these buses, go there with your health professional voice. I'll help you do it.
Mounds View just put in geothermal.
Yeah.
And I know a guy named Jim DeMay who's on the board there. So I'll connect you with him to talk about buses.
Yeah, I think they may have been one that got a couple buses
Okay.
in the last round or the MPCA round with North Star.
Good.
Yeah, that's great.
I
All right.
love all the connections and ideas happening in real time. That's the point of the climate conversation. So again, thanks so much for everybody for your engagement and your participation. I've thrown a couple things in the chat for everybody, some contact information for all of us. The URL for our YouTube channel where this video will be posted, and we also have previous climate convos. We also have that short educational video about air pollution. I threw that in the chat earlier because there was some discussion about what are ways that health professionals can be talking about air pollution with patients and educating themselves. So that was an effort that we made for something that doesn't take very much time but has a lot of impact. We did even test that out through like a pre-post evaluation survey and had really great results on the effectiveness of it. We have ideas of wanting to bring that video into clinical spaces for patients to also view as well. We just haven't been able to move that forward yet with all the other things that are happening, but please feel free to pass that video around and take a look at it as well as a tool. And I have really quick here a couple of other things to share, just to let you know some other future events that we have coming up. So as I mentioned at the top of the hour, we are having our climate convos monthly. The plan for next month is to talk about the cumulative impacts initiative through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, which some of you may be familiar with. This was a long-running effort by the Frontline Communities Protection Association, who worked to get this bill put in on cumulative impacts that authorizes the MPCA to, or actually charges them with needing to assess, ongoing pollution impacts, is particularly in climate justice neighborhoods before permitting new polluting facilities. And this process now, as it goes into the implementation phase, really needs participation from the public to help make sure that this actually does do what it's supposed to do to support environmental justice in Minnesota. So we'll be talking about that next month and learning about, how we can be more involved in that process. And then we're really excited to announce that in November, we're going to have our Code Blue for Patient Earth conference. We do this biannually. This year's theme is weathering uncertainty. So we're really going to focus again on community voices of what are the impacts of climate change that people are experiencing and what can we do collectively as health professionals and community members to try to work towards mitigation and adaptation in ways that are locally responsive. So that is that. Here again is how you can stay connected with us. You can snap that QR code or visit that link and subscribe to the email list if you are not already subscribed. So with that, thanks everybody. We will be, oh, maybe I have the date wrong. I thought we were going third Wednesdays. Well, stay tuned. We'll be sending a follow-up email to all the folks who RSVP to this climate convo with copies of these slides, the video link, etc.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good to see everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
good night.